My name is Alyssa Griffin, and I'm 16 years old.
I'm Noah DeCasas, and I'm 17.
I grew up with a mom and a dad that both were drug addicts and alcoholics and partied every weekend, and my dad was active in a gang, and he went back to prison when I was in 1st to 3rd grade, so it was basically just me, my mom, and my brother for that time. And my mom took us to church during that time, and she really tried to find God and stuff, but it was just not there for us, and we were just not touched by it at all. My mom still continued to party and, smoke weed every so often, but she really tried to keep us sheltered from those things. After my dad got out of prison, life was basically what we thought was normal. My parents argued a lot, and we lived in a 1-bedroom house. My parents slept in the living room while me and my brother slept in a bunk bed in a tiny little room. And my parents just really struggled to make ends meet. When I was in junior high school, I really struggled with my image and the way that I looked at myself and my perspective on myself, and I was overweight, and people always made comments about my weight, and there was always verbal abuse in the home from, people that were supposed to be supporting me and lifting me up, and I thought that this was completely normal, but, everyone else around me was these skinny little kids and stuff, so one day I just decided that, I was gonna make myself throw up after I ate. So that's what started my eating disorder, and I'd say I was in early 6th grade. And this started off as me trying to become, fit and in shape and skinny like the other kids, and I started losing weight and becoming thinner, and I made a lot more friends because I was wearing a lot of makeup and trying to make myself look older. But the disorder was consuming me completely. I did it 2 to 3 times a day, and I just remember sitting on the bathroom floor just so unhappy with myself. And just so unhappy with how I looked and how I was acting, because it wasn't who I was, and there was nothing that could make me feel whole or happy, and I was trying to fill a hole, but I just was so confused and so lost. But I had this act going that I was okay, and that, things were good for me, and that I could do anything, and I carried myself so pridefully that, nothing could stop me, and that, I was the best thing there was, and, on the inside I was just so sad and just so in just such a dark place, and I couldn't get out. I just remember feeling like I was in a hole, like I'd fell in a hole, and there was no way getting out. There was no way that I was gonna get out. And when I was like 12, we first came to the sanctuary, and I remember I felt God's presence for the first time, and that day I got saved, but still the disorder it really just consumed me. It was me and my disorder, and I struggled with it.
I was born into a Christian household, but right around the age of 7, my parents drifted away from Christ, and we started moving a lot more. We got into a more permanent home around the age of 10, and that's when it started getting a little bit more difficult. My parents started partying and everything, so I didn't really see him, so my older sister took care of us, me and my little sister. And it was just really difficult, basically raising each other. It's hard, even when the parents were home, they're chilling in the other room because they're still messed up from the night before, and that was hard to deal with. Right around the age of 13, 7th grade, my dad was diagnosed with a deadly disease. He ended up basically on his deathbed. He went flatlined at one point, and my mom left him during that time. That was really hard on the family. my grandparents took us in, and I went into a stage of depression where I just couldn't handle being around anyone. I was just mad at the world, especially after what happened to my dad and everything, and especially mad at God, because just wondering, like, how would he let that happen to us? We lost our house, he lost his job during that time. I grew up inside a skating atmosphere, so even the kids around my age were introduced to stuff that I wasn't at the time. I was introduced to weed when I turned 14. One of my friends, I just decided to, and since I was still inside that depression stage, I turned to that a lot more. I knew how to keep it low key and everything, that no one would know what I was up to. And also around that time I started taking pills, right around the age of 15, and I think that was just to get away from the problem that I was going through at the time. I'd just take pills and go to sleep and just hope I didn't wake up because of the depression, but also the suicidal thoughts going through my head at that time. My dad sent me to Gravity Winter Camp 2010, and that was when I had my first encounter with God. And I just kept on having encounters with him, but I just didn't feel like I was ready to surrender, like that life was calling me too strongly. I couldn't maintain a relationship with God just because I was still too in love with the world, and the two just weren't going to coincide together, because I just go through phases of wanting God and then phases of just wanting nothing to do with him and just go skate and smoke weed.
It was after my first few times of going to Gravity Youth, and it was during worship, and I was standing in the corner of the room back when we were all bunched up together, and I just remember God's love just touching me, and I'd never felt anything like that, and that hole and that darkness was just automatically filled, and there was so much peace and love, and I felt like I could do it. I felt like I could make it, and that I was going to be okay. I felt like I was okay. I had peace within me, and I just lifted my hands up in the air, and there was tears, and there was crying, and I really was touched by God that night. Right after I said, God, I'm going to give you everything I have. Just take every part of me. And I didn't know what I was saying, but I just knew that I had to say those words. I just had to tell God that I loved him, and that I was thankful for him, and I was thankful that he was holding my hand and going to help walk with me, and I wanted to do life with him. And I remember God giving me this vision, and it was just me laying hands on people and giving them what I had too, trying to help them do life with God as well, and showing them that they could have this whole field as well. God's always given me a voice, and that night God really gave me a voice. God really helped show me that my life had value and that I was worth something. And in this vision, God just showed me that it was going to be okay, and that I was going to have to fight, and I was going to have to be strong, but that he was going to make me have this strength, and God was going to give me this peace and this love, and that my life and all the things that I had been through was a testimony. And I was 13, 14, and I still had so much life to live, and that this was not the end, and that there was more to my story, there was more to my life, and that my testimony was going to be powerful, and I was going to constantly feel like I was having to fight upstream, but that I was going to do it, and that I was going to make it.
One of my friends invited me to Gravity Youth Winter Camp in 2013, and just one of those nights worshiping, God just completely broke me down, and it was at that very moment, just crying out, like I was just bawling my eyes out, and I just knew I wanted to give everything to God and just completely surrender to him and his will. And because the whole time, because I had those encounters with God placed, I already knew my calling that God had on my life, and the whole time I was just running away. So when I started worshiping, like the first words I heard that kept on repeating inside my head were, "Stop running away," and I don't know, it just completely broke me down, because it was as clear as if one of you guys were to be talking to me right now. and I just gave everything to God that night, my all. At the end of the worship, I just like fell asleep on the floor, and not like because I was tired or bored or anything, but just in complete peace of what God's done in my life, and like that was a peace I've never felt before. It was just so soothing and comforting, and His love was just all over me, and that was the night that God changed my life forever.
If there was one word to describe the old me, it would definitely be empty. But if there was one word to describe the new me, it would be joyful. Just so, so joyful.
I would describe myself, the old me, as a runaway. Like someone that's ran away from their home or something. The new me, I would, in one word, say that I'm secure.
Easter means to me just a new beginning, that, you can be in a certain place and that, you can have, this darkness in you and stuff, but giving your life to God, you can just become such a completely different person with Christ, and that God is just going to walk the walk with you, and that He loves you, and that, He would die for you. That's what Easter means to me.
What Easter means to me is new life. Just how has Jesus died on the cross and rose from the grave. I believe as we are spiritually dead with Jesus, we can breathe new life.
Either way, Christ's love controls us.
Since we believe that Christ died for all, we also believe that we have all died to our old lives.
He died for everyone so that those who receive His new life will no longer live for themselves. Instead, they will live for Christ, who died and who raised for them.
So we have stopped evaluating others from a human point of view. At one time, we thought of Christ merely from a human point of view.
How differently we know Him now.
This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person.
The old life is gone, a new life has begun.
This is the new me.